Hello, friends. Today we're going to talk about why should you care about the phenomena of spiritual awakening. Whether you've had a spiritual awakening or not, or whether you're conscious of the fact that you've been evolving in a certain way in this lifetime, why should we care about the experience of spiritual awakening to humanity, to the world, to all of existence? And Eckhart Tolle writes about, in one of his books, The New Earth, how in the evolution and the history of life, he just captures the moment that a plant turned into a flower. And of course, we take flowers often for granted because we can access them so easily in so many ways, in so many places. The beauty of a rose and simplicity of dandelion. We can fully grasp it when we pay attention and savor it, but generally these things wash over us if we're caught in the trance of life, which we often are. But to go back to that time in which there were no flowers, the experience of flowering was not something that had yet been a possibility in the existence of this particular universe and this galaxy and this planet. Everything before that time would have been photosynthesizing plants and leaves, which of course is a miracle in and of itself. But the act and experience of flowering was not ever known until the moment that it happened. And if you could imagine being part of the plant kingdom, part of the plant world, suddenly you look over, your neighbor Bob turns into a flower. You're like, whoa, what just happened? I don't know. I don't know how you would feel as a plant and witnessing the first flowering. But let's suppose it would be magnificent, wonderful, magic. And let's suppose that there was nothing that that plant did to flower, the act of flowering. That plant didn't go and sit in a cave and meditate. That plant didn't say a mantra. That plant didn't change its diet. Let's assume that in the unfolding of the universe, as a perfect flow of life and activity, that was the right moment in which flowering would take place. And that flowering puts so many other things into life. You think about the miracle of pollination and the relationships between insects and flowers and plants and trees and our own survival. It would absolutely be necessary if we were going to exist in this moment and have this conversation that the one moment of the flowering of the universe was to occur. I think for me, the interesting and helpful thing to think about that particular phenomenon, that moment of flowering, is that that plant simply was part of the bigger perfection of the unfolding of the universe in that moment to flower. I'm going to make an assumption that that plant was something special and also nothing special at all. That plant, its role in the necessary steps of life was to become the flowering plant in that particular exact moment, in that particular exact way, in that particular exact place. And it would not be the last plant to flower, it would only be the first. And not only would other plants flower, but the variety and the colors and the smells would be rather infinite over a period of time until The experience of a flower, although always captivating, would become commonplace, captivating and commonplace. Something's a miracle until it's not. There's only something that's miraculous as long as the confines of our mind cannot place logically how things work. And I always laugh. I came up with this example that's helpful to me. My dog, Winnie. But any dog, they sit there all day, and then I know when someone's going to walk in that door 10, 15, 20 minutes, an hour before they get there. And I know because I have this technology that we all have access to that's ubiquitous called a phone. So before that person gets here, maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes, I'll start saying as a game, so-and-so's coming. She knows different people's names, so she gets really excited. And I would imagine to her, that's an absolute miracle. How the heck do I know that? And it's the same with us, with any kind of sage or mystic or guru or enlightened being. Thousands and thousands and thousands of stories that are written throughout the ages and in the current time about how beings can know things that the vast majority of the population cannot perceive in the same way. Not better or worse, just different. So those are considered miracles. If I sit with someone and they tell me what happened in my 8th year of life and I've never met them, generally people would consider that miraculous, because within the confines of our mind, we can't grasp it. So the phenomena of miracles, just like the phenomena of the flowering, we always know the evolution of consciousness is happening as long as we can point to miracles. As long as there is magic and mystery, and specifically miracles as we would define them, everything still is changing. It means that that flower, that one single flower that first experienced its awakening, if you will, maybe doing nothing special at all other than the fact that it was the miraculous existence of its life that was enough to unfold just a little bit more. And within our own consciousness and mind, the ability to get out of the linear game of time and beyond the time-space paradigm that we confine most of our stories of life into. Maybe it's miraculous, but it just means there's a smaller field of flowers that are currently blooming that way. And for the human experience compared to a flower, the popularized story is that, in fact, those who have experienced some kind of awakening, enlightenment, some sort of pervasive or non-pervasive form of awakening, the difference between the human story and the flower story is that, we must do something, we must be something, we must give up everything. And it tends to be true that those who have spent their life in austerity, giving distractions up, giving sensory distractions up, giving financial distractions up, romantic distractions up, that it is often in times most seen as a shedding. It's a letting go. It's a giving away that gets down to a true enough essence of life that is the miracle. In fact, the life, the fact that we exist, period, is the miracle. And then we layer, as our persona and our ego, we layer all these things on top of that miracle. But in fact, the miracle is the existence of the life that we think that we have, that we are, which in fact is in and of itself just the miracle of life. It's only ourselves as a identified human form who change that miracle of life into a personalized story, into an identity. And we make it our life. Life doesn't make it our life. Life is life. There's, one consciousness and one energy, but as an experience of the play and the dance of the universe, we, as a human incarnation, we make it the story of our life. And then upon that basis and that foundation of the story of our life, we choose to add all the layers of the complexity and the complication and all the things, right? All the relationships, all the communication, all the possessions, all the things to do, all the things to be, all the things to achieve. So often in the human experience, it's a decoupling, it's a devolving. It is the art of getting back to the original miracle that allows the awakening to happen, just like the flower. And so the experience or possibility of awakening is not personal. There's nothing good or better about an incarnation that has the ability to detach, decouple, devolve, to get back to a more simple truth of the power and miracle of existence. Everyone's incarnation has a purpose, just like a field, just like grasses and flowers and trees. They're not all the same, and that's for a reason, because the interplay amongst them is perfect and absolutely necessary. If the world was all a bed of roses, it couldn't sustain itself, nor could anyone appreciate the miracle of the rose. And the same goes true for humanity and creation, in that there must be separation to perceive beauty and to perceive anger and hate and pain. And all of those are part of the one. The separation, the pain, the anxiety, it's all necessary to have a relationship to the absolute oneness and the perfection. If you were all that existed, there was no time, there was no space. You could not look at yourself in the mirror, because even the act of looking at something other than yourself would be separation. So no separation, all the energy of the universe. In fact, that would be incredibly boring. It's like, if you were God, what would you do? Well, you only think about that in terms of infinite separation. Well, I would do this and I would change that. Those are the games. Those are what they call the leelas, the dance. And then suddenly you understand why we would have all the variety of experience that we do have. If you ask sort of theoretically someone the question, like, if you were God, what would you do? What would you change? Most people, don't talk about nothingness, right? They don't say nothing. I would just be. There'd be nothing to watch, nothing to do, nowhere to go. And although that holds its own perfection, the infinite creative capability and capacity for life to show forth in all of its essence, every level, the good and the bad, and the dance of the dark and the light, and the hot and the cold, the heavy and the light, all these elements of polarity are part of the dance and the game of possibility, of the possibility of life. So pretty much when anyone ever theoretically answers the question, if you were God, whatever that means to you, they immediately get into varieties of separation, things that they would see, do, be. So with that in mind, know that awakening is not an achievement. And, I think everyone needs to do what's right in their heart, but we're so blessed to have access to more spiritual teachings than we ever thought were possible, from all times, from all places, from all voices, from all paths. Doesn't mean that we expose ourselves to them, but they're there. And that opportunity is miraculous. That opportunity to have access to shared consciousness of all paths, of all understandings of the universe, of life, that is miraculous, right? It's only deemed not miraculous because we take for granted, this miracle. But all of that is part of awakening, because again, awakening is not a personified thing. It's not something that happens to humans. Awakening is of consciousness, and consciousness is all of life. So awakening is the totality of the evolution of all consciousness, and all consciousness, again, is the experience of all life. And we start to look at the condition of the earth from the standpoint of, good and bad and healthy and unhealthy. And it can be super daunting and heavy, because creation and destruction, the relationships thereof, it's a hard one to accept. It's a hard one to surrender to, that ultimately all of creation has an equal relationship to all of destruction, and nothing will abide forever. Sometimes that time and phase of creation or destruction is more evident, and now we are in a time where we can see the destruction and the creation simultaneously at high intensity levels. We have the wildfires, and we have starvation. We have glaciers drying up. And at the same time, we have the birth of shared information, learning, evolution. The Buddha would always remark that learning, the process of learning, not as an idea like we have access to books and education, it's a right. No, the actual process of learning, it was miraculous. To take a standard form of consciousness, a set of ideas and beliefs, and then through auditory sounds and signals in something we call our mind, it will change all emotions, all chemistry, all experiences of love, potentially, through the process of learning. And so therefore, learning is part of awakening as well. Climate change is part of awakening as well. That first flower is actually no different than the last glacier. I'll often remark, there is a binary understanding in existence. Everything is perfect. Everything. Or everything is imperfect. But perfection, in my experience, is pervasive. Creation as one thing, which it is one thing that we experience in infinite ways. This one thing is either perfect or imperfect. It is not perfect here and imperfect there, or vice versa. It's one or the other. So for the human experience, as part of that total creation, as part of awakening, regardless if you're going to spiritual retreats or meditating or, slaughtering cows for beef, you're all part of the awakening of consciousness. Because the interplay of the dark and the light and the polarity and the good and the bad that we perceive in a certain way, it's all part of it. And it's all heading in a certain direction. So when we talk about spiritual awakening that everyone is going through, whether they identify with it or not, whether they want to talk about it or not, Whether or not it's something they want to, read or study about, it doesn't matter, because again, there's not multiple consciousness. There's one consciousness. So that flower, and we know how plants talk now through scientific research, right? Through the roots and how they share resources, are the same in that, we're like these little flowering trees and roots of humanity, just because our roots are not physically connected, mentally, emotionally, scientifically. All of our shared understanding is one, through all of our information systems that no one person developed, that came from an amalgamation of millions of lives, over millions of years, that we're sitting here now receiving this information in this way, in this format. It's not because of anyone. It's because of one consciousness of awakening. Where the reality scientifically is we're moving around the sun, at 67,000 miles per hour right now. You don't notice it. Scientifically, it's true. Our galaxy is moving at almost 500,000 miles per hour through the solar system. And that's happening right now. In a day's time, you're in a part of the universe that you've never known before as it expands. And you're going to wake up and think that today's going to be exactly like every other day. Why would it be? Infinite miracles are possible. Infinite creativity and playfulness is possible. Because everything's different all the time. You're pretending that because you hear an alarm clock and there's something called a calendar, and we divide up the time in which that 67,000 miles per hour is happening, that it's going to be the same day as yesterday. I mean, that's just a crazy game that we play because our minds can't comprehend all the miracles all the time that are happening. So awakening is important because it's the essence of what we are as life, as consciousness, and it's always evolving, and we're not controlling it, nor are we responsible for it. The important part, the participatory part of spiritual awakening, is to only shed the games that we've created to pretend that everything is not a miracle all the time. It's only the human condition. It's only within the egoic sharing of stories, time, calendars, meetings, titles, importance, mortgages, yada, 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 yada. It's only in those creations that we distract ourselves from our own flowering. Doesn't mean we don't participate. Doesn't mean we deny the fact that that is a societal construct in which we participate and live. It's quite the opposite. It's all of that can be fully experienced without stress, without division, without anxiety, when you realize it's all part of the play of the universe. So the experience of awakening is important because it allows us to accept things just exactly as they are, as part of that unfolding. And we don't do practices only to be peaceful, or only to be calm, or only to be less stressed within still the confines of a total structure of, fictional stories and games and forgetting the miracles. We do it to get back to the simplicity of always living and knowing the miracle. That is the pervasive awakened state. You don't have to have a halo around your head. You don't have to live in a cave. But if you live a life in which you can remember the pervasiveness of the miracle at all times, no one needs to tell you you're awake. That, in fact, is the greatest freedom and playfulness and creativity. That is getting back to the true childlike nature of experiencing life in its full effect. its full capacity and balance. So I leave you with the thought and the idea that don't achieve awakening. Don't look for achieving some higher state of mind or some higher state of being. Don't create another gap, another grasping, longing set of attachments. Through sadhana, you let go of things and you get back to the miracle of the simplicity of life. You flower like the flower. You awaken as part of the dance, not because you're chasing it, not because you're dancing in front of someone. The dance is done as the dance because the dance has to happen as part of the miracle of creation. As soon as you can step out of the path of achieving or performing, you can get back into that ultimate flow of perfect unity and harmony and balance. But however your life is unfolding, in this moment you happen to be listening to this, and in that unfolding it is completely and totally perfect. So it's the surrender and the acceptance of exactly where you are, how you are, and being able to love that. That's the start of the journey. But again, just to sum up, why is awakening important? Why should we care? Well, first of all, awakening is the totality of existence, whether we think we're controlling it or not. The awakening is an evolution of more perfection of all of life's connection. And it's happening now at a time which we're talking about it and seeing it beyond just creating the fulfillment of our basic needs. So now that we're here at this point in time, we can start to put vocabulary around it. We can start to share practices. We can start to have retreats. We can start to change the way that we eat and that we love and that we live. But awakening is going to happen with or without our egoic story. And the flower is going to flower without the flower being inside of a cave. But purity is important. Truth is important. Those conditions are, in fact, the water and the rain for the flower, the purity and the truth of existence. So it is our job not to muddy our roots with things that are unnecessarily complicated, distorted, perverted. And it's important because it's the direction and way of things in the time that we're in and how we're experiencing right now. The greater love and the sharing of love, understanding love not as a verb, but as a pervasive beingness, a noun, a statement of being, so that we can have greater spaciousness and capacity for the evolution and the change that's happening right now. These two things must happen to keep balance together at the same time. As the earth is evolving at an incredibly rapid pace, so too must consciousness evolve to deepen the capacity for us to participate and play in this new space. That's why it's important. We don't need to achieve. We need to create spaciousness and capacity to operate in this world without lust and greed and hate. All of those being fear responses. All of those being reactionary because there is not enough spaciousness or capacity in one's life, their experience of their life. I don't need to give the examples. We see them daily. We know what's fear-based and what is the dog barking because it's got its trap around its foot, hurting, scared. So I encourage you to relax. Let's not make these conversations so esoteric or ethereal or unachievable. It's not achievement. Life is awakening through you. It's happening with or without you. The flower cannot choose not to flower. Can't go back, The butterfly, caterpillar never had a choice. It's just that if you are conscious of the fact that you are awakening, which you all are, you can choose to have fun and to share it. And that's where the playfulness comes in. And that's conversations like this, that's retreats, that's singing, that's finding your passions. That's living in the perfect world. Living in the imperfect world, well, that's a different set of activities. That's the fear-based, that's reactionary, that's the scarcity. A different set of activities than art and singing and gardening and being in nature, meditating, deep conversations with people that you know and you love and respect, reading, learning, evolving. Those are beautiful activities in a perfect place. And we can do them together with friends. We can do them solo. But this is the time that we get to rediscover all of this as our sovereign birthright. Not a luxury. Not something that is a privilege. Our genuine birthright as an incarnate being of love. All of us. Here's to your awakening because you simply exist. Remember to savor the miracle of your life. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to know. All you have to do is gratefully savor the fact that I am what I am is the miracle. Thank you, everyone.